Good morning, it's Lisa from Lisa Heal Yourself, and today I want to do a video. Somebody had asked me a question the other day when I posted a video on rewriting the story from another person's point of view. And they were talking about just giving an example about their father-in-law, how they always reach out to this person, and this person never responds. And basically, how can they rewrite the story from that person's point of view if they don't even know that person, if they don't really know anything intimate details about that person? How do they see the story from that person's point of view? So I just want to go into that a little bit because I think it's an important question, and it has a lot to do with how we view our own chronic illness and pain and suffering and emotional distress and anything that's going on in our life. If we can't leave our own story behind, if we can't rewrite our own story, then we can never leave it behind in order to go forward. And unless we can start seeing other points of view for the story, so other people's points of view, we'll never see our own different points of view within. So let's just go back and look at other people's points of view. I had mentioned it as an example that it's really important to rewrite a story from not only your limited personal point of view with all your emotional stories in place, but also from the other characters in the story, the other people who are doing you wrong, doing you harm, the situation, the experience, whatever it is that's a problem, seeing it from their point of view. And as a writer, this is just it seems to be a simple exercise for me, but it may be difficult to people who have never done any kind of creative writing. So I want to just break that down step by step. The first step is to realize that there are different points of view. There are always, without exception, more than one side to a story. Always. So if we can first just recognize that is huge right off the bat. So we recognize that we are telling the story from our perspective. That is not the only perspective. The other perspectives are wildly and vastly different from our own. So it's really important to get this, like to really snap into it and to say, wow, I see it. So a person whose husband cheats on her, and she's telling the story about how she can't believe she trusted him, and she's telling the story from her point of view, her limited. Sorry about that, my camera just fell. I'm just gonna hold it. She's telling the story from her limited point of view, which means the story is going to be sad from her perspective. Right? I can't believe he did this to me. He hurt me. He promised to love me. He promised to not cheat on me. He had this, it hurt my heart. He had this affair with somebody else. How could he do this to me? We have children. My mother's sick, and there's all these things going on in my life, and he's the one person I thought I could count on, and he let me down. Right? So that's one point of view for that story. Now, and he might, that all might be true. So we're not invalidating the truth. All of these points of view are true. They're true for the person telling the story. Now, from his point of view, he might tell the story differently. And it's 100% a fact that he will tell this story differently. And maybe the story goes something like, I married the most beautiful woman in the world who I loved with. She became emotionally unavailable for me. She had so many things going on. I wasn't able to please her. I wasn't able to help her. She criticized me for everything I did. She stopped talking to me. I had another person at work who was paying loads of attention to me, who really understood what I was going through with my problems. I needed somebody to listen to me, and she was there. She offered me the support that I felt like my wife couldn't offer me, and she showed me I felt love for the first time in a very long time. And when she kissed me, I knew I shouldn't be doing it, but I let my heart lead that experience, and we ended up having an affair because I felt like she was the only person who could love and understand me. And although I wanted and needed my wife, she was unavailable to me. And I wish it would have been different. So this is one point of view. Now there could be many, many points of different view from which that story is told, right? So you could, and they're all valid and they're all right. And when you don't know somebody and you don't have intimate details about them, their past, their history, it's very hard to make up a story. But you can just make up a story. It doesn't have to be the right story. So in the case of her father-in-law, first she could tell the story from his point of view, from a grown man who as a boy was abused and berated by his own parents and father, who was hit. Now, whether this story is true or not, tell the story of why that man isn't reaching out back to them from that point of view. Then maybe we want to tell the story, try it from a different point of view. He's gay. Now, this might be further from the truth than anything, but he feels shunned and ashamed and like he can't be himself around these people. Tell it from that point of view. Tell it from a point of view from a person who has had a cancer diagnosis and doesn't want to tell anybody, doesn't want to burden anybody, doesn't want to be, a problem or that way. Tell it from somebody who's had, their wife or their children's leave them. Tell it from a person's point of view who had to go to work and work for the family their whole life and was never able to pursue their own dreams, and they had a burning dream, but they couldn't do it, and they had to be everything to everybody else. They had to be something to everybody else, and they could never, ever just focus on themselves. So just start telling it from all kinds of different points of view. Tell somebody like the other side of your story from somebody's point of view, and if you don't know their point of view, do it from a point of view, any point of view. Just know that there is a story on the other side of it, and you may never get that story right. You may never know the details. You may never have the intimate knowledge to be able to tell that story from their point of view the way you would if you were a fly on the wall in a therapist's office. However, just by acknowledging that there are many different points of view, and it could be a number of 10, 20, 30 different things or ways that you can tell that story, is opening up your mind to say, wow, this story could be told from another angle. And I love those stories in books and movies that tell stories from different characters' point of view. It's like a vignette, right? You start off with one character, then you move to the second character, and you're seeing the story through different eyes, and then again through different eyes again from the next character, and they weave the whole story together through different characters' points of view. There's a beautiful vignette and a beautiful way to help us see that there's always different sides to a story, and it's never just our own limited victim-y point of view, right? There's a many different points of view in this story, and usually there's a victim story from each person, there's a hero story from each person, there's a sad story from each person, there's a motivated and a determined story from each person's point of view. There's a shut off point of view from each person. There's also the person who longs for connection from each person's point of view. So it's very important that we realize that there are all kinds of different points of view from the story that need to be told and that exist. And this helps us when we get, and the reason why it's not important to get this story right is because it doesn't really matter. It's just making us aware that there are. It takes us out of our limited perspective. And then and only then can we go inside into our own internal parts of the warrior within you, the hero within you, the victim within you, the sad person within you, the determined person within you, the person who has walls up within you, the person who longs for connection within you. And we can start to see our own story from the different points of view within ourselves. And this is where the real, true healing work begins. So my next video is going to break down exactly how to do this internal story point of view telling. Because while the external story point of view with all the different people in your lives is important, it's not where the healing work comes from. The healing work comes from, that's just a first step to recognize and to be able to do that. Once you're able to do that, then you can actually bring it within and start to realize all the different parts within you have their own story, have their own needs, their own wants, their own values, their own fears, right? And these are the warring parts within you that are keeping you stuck, sick, chronically ill, chronically in pain, chronically fatigued, right? Chronic anxiety or depression, these emotional parts within you, right? These fragmented parts within yourself, the parts of you that are, you have so many parts within you, and they have their own needs and wants and desires, and we have to meet all of those parts, needs, wants, and desires for us to feel whole again. And some parts have been completely overtaken by other parts. And you have one or two or three predominant parts that are telling your story. And we need to stop that. We need to let all the parts tell their point of view on the story, because there's many different parts within you that are being hushed, quieted, shunned, turned away from, rejected, denied, disowned. And we need to look at all of them. We need to hear all of those parts so that we can meet all their needs and integrate them and become one. So I hope this video has been helpful. I hope it answered your question to the lady who asked it the other day if she's watching. And I hope it just gave you a little further push on the parts work that's coming up next in order to really help us identify and leave behind our old story and create a new one. But until we do that, we have to hear the story from all the different points of view, right? Before we can create a new one that works for the new identity that we want to create. So I hope this has been helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.